Losing perspective. Sometimes that's easy to do. You look at something maybe with tainted vision. You look at something from a perspective that maybe isn't as healthy as what it could be. You're viewing it just from one side, and that is so easy to happen. It's hard sometimes to place yourself in somebody else's shoes. It's hard to look at something other than the way maybe you've always seen it, or that you were taught to see it. It's something even fresh, but you're still coming only from where you're at, and you're seeing something. There's a story about two men who worked in the correctional system, in the prison system, and their jobs were basically sociologists, ones that would help those who had social problems that ended them where they were, in prison. And so they were helping those. They had done it for many years together. They had become good friends, and they were just helping people overcome problems that hurt other people. And they were walking down the street. They saw a man who had been mugged, beat up. He was laying there. He was bleeding. He was unconscious. One of the men looked at the other one and said, whoever did this to him really needs help. You think about that for a minute, and I guess we got another flood warning probably. So there will probably be more of those go off. So let's just try to get, unless it's a tornado warning, let me know, okay? But these guys had perspective. Their goal in life was to help people who were hurting other people. And here's the guy laying on the street, and they're thinking, we need to help the person who did this, because that's the perspective they were coming from. They were really coming from that. And here's a guy laying on the street, really needs some help, and they're thinking about the guy that did it to him. All in perspective. Go to Luke chapter 6. Luke chapter 6. It is so easy for us sometimes to be really hard on the people, and granted, with what was going on, there's a reason to be upset with these people we're going to read about. Rick. Yeah, that's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. So in Luke chapter 6, we see some people who are really coming from a strange perspective. If you start in verse 6, it says, on another Sabbath, he entered the synagogue, talking about Jesus. He entered the synagogue and was teaching, and there was a man there whose right hand was withered. The scribes and the Pharisees were watching him closely to see if he healed on Sabbath, so that they might find reason to accuse him. But he knew what they were thinking, and he said to the man with the withered hand, get up and come forward. And he got up and came forward. And Jesus said to them, I ask you, is it lawful to do good or to do harm on the Sabbath, to save life or to destroy it? After looking around at them, he said to him, stretch out your hand. And he did so, and his hand was restored. But they themselves were filled with rage and discussed together what they might do to Jesus. We read this and we think, how in the world could you justify yourself in that situation? They were in it. They were coming from their perspective in life was, this man's going to ruin everything. They had the power, they had the authority, they had the praise of the people, and they all of these things that they had experienced, and it wasn't that they were teaching bad. Jesus at one point said, do what they say to do, just don't do as they're doing. Because they were following the very things that they were teaching. But these Pharisees were watching Jesus. Now get this, they were watching Jesus to see if he was going to heal on the Sabbath so they could bring something against him. Now if you were experiencing Jesus healing somebody. He had already healed. If you were experiencing Jesus healing somebody, not a situation where somebody might get up and take a step or two and then they were back down on the ground or had to sit back down in the chair. Jesus healed somebody, they were healed. If they were blind, they could see. If they were lame, they could walk. There was absolutely no question about the fact that Jesus was healing people. And you're watching to see he's going to heal somebody so you can accuse him. Does that not sound weird to anybody else? But from their perspective, they were just wanting to trap Jesus. Their perspective, that's all they could think about was trapping Jesus. Sometimes we get into a perspective in life that it's all we can think about is what somebody else is going to do, what they're going to say, how they're going to react. And we're just waiting for that to happen. In this case, it was even to the point of if he healed. Well, if he healed, why not rejoice? He's able to heal. Maybe we need to listen, right? And yet, it wasn't their perspective. In Isaiah chapter 6, there's several things that are said there within the chapter that indicate the people that Isaiah was writing about, the things that God was going to have Isaiah say were to a people who were rebellious, people who were not going to turn to him. And there were things coming for them that wasn't going to be good. But he says in verse 8, actually, starting there, he says, "Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then I said, Here am I, send me. He said, Go and tell this people, keep on listening, but do not perceive. Keep on looking, but do not understand. Render the hearts of the people insensitive, their ears dull, and their eyes dim. Otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and return and be healed." He says, keep on listening, but don't perceive. Keep on looking, but don't understand. The perspective that these people had worked themselves into where they were rebellious. And regardless of what God was going to say, they were going to get it. And it seems, as we're looking at the Pharisees, that were waiting for Jesus to heal somebody on the Sabbath so that they could accuse. That's where we're at. In Proverbs chapter 23 and 7, and this is one of those more familiar Proverbs, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. What are you thinking about? What are you dwelling on? What are the things that are going through your mind on a regular basis? For most of us, there's something that's a common thought. Through every day, it's constantly there. Sometimes it takes the form of a hobby, something you really like to do. Maybe it's something new. You got something new in life, or you're experiencing something new in life, and that's all you can think about. You can't wait to get off work. You can't wait to get up in the morning because you're going to go do this, or you're going to experience that. Or it's a person, and all of a sudden you have this relationship, and that's all you can think about. It can be so many different things other than God. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. We can place our priorities in places that completely change our perspective on everything. That's what was happening with people. So what's the solution? Turn to Philippians chapter 4. As you're turning there, remember the story about the two guys and their perspective. Their perspective was help the person who did that heinous crime, and they really weren't even thinking about the guy that's laying there bleeding. Well, perspective, we know it. We've all heard this. The grass is always greener where? On the other side of the fence. And you watch cats; they do that all the time. We were talking about the fence across from us and how Jeff has to constantly work on the fence. I know Ray John constantly having to work on the fence. Bruce and Kathy, I'm sure, are constantly having to work on things. Anybody who has animals, you know, they're gonna try to get that grass that's over there. If they eat what's over here, they're gonna get that over there. But we know that phrase. True, we look at what somebody else has or what somebody else is experiencing or getting to do and all of that, and it always looks so much better. I read somewhere that there was one of those columns where somebody wrote in that she would always look at her neighbor's yard, and it was always so much better than hers did. And she put a lot of time to her yard, but every time she looked over there, the neighbor's yard always looked better. And she said so she decided she would go over to the neighbor's house and ask, you know, what are you doing? How come your yard looks so good? What can you do to make my yard look so good? When she went around, walked down on the sidewalk and walked up just to the sidewalk, she was in the midst of her neighbor's yard, and she looked over at her yard, and it looked better. So she was asking the question in the column, why is this? Why does that happen? There was a very wise answer in the column that basically said, because when you're standing there, you see the dirt. When you're looking over in the other yard, you don't see the dirt, you just see the grass. You know, if we're looking from a perspective and we're thinking the grass is greener over there, we're not seeing the dirt. We're just seeing the perspective that maybe is just taking in the surface level. You know, like, I can't believe, again in a sermon, I'm going to mention Facebook. But how much bad do you see about a person and then post about themselves on Facebook? You know, it's all this, everything's wonderful until they turn away from the camera. Philippians chapter 4. And there's a lot that we could probably look at within the chapter. But talking about how we think, and if we're thinking on certain things, that's what we're going to be like. This verse addresses it directly in verse 8. Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute, if there is any excellence and if anything worthy of praise, dwell on these things. Let me read that one more time. Whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute, if there is any excellence, if anything is worthy of praise, dwell on these things. You want to get a right perspective? And listen to that verse. Dwell on those things. Turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 13. It's interesting because, and I guess this would be, the conclusion, if you will. If the praise team wants to go and come up, you can. I'm going to read verse 5. But I think the best response to this, and it may be that you need to respond by coming up and maybe we just have prayer together. It may not be something that you need to share with anybody besides you and God. Or it may be something that you need to share with everybody. I don't know. But as we look at this verse says it this way. He says, test yourselves to see if you are in the faith. Examine yourselves. I mean, if we're at a point of testing ourselves, what is it that we're thinking about all the time? What is it that we're dwelling on? What is it that's capturing us, that's giving us a perspective that is saying, oh, I wish I had that. Or I wish I had this. That's causing us not to be content with what God has blessed us with. So test yourselves to see if you're in the faith. Examine yourselves. Or do you not recognize this about yourselves, that Jesus Christ is in you, unless indeed you fail the test? So there is a reason, there's a time for us to reflect on who we are. It's right, think on those things. If it's not, maybe we need to change our perspective. You need to respond to this, come as we can and sing.